Once there was a little farm with a pond full of geese and ducks. On a fine spring morning, a mother duck felt her eggs start to crack beneath her. One by one, all the eggs broke open, with each new baby duckling cuter than ever. Until the last egg broke open. The duckling did not look like the other cute little ducklings. He was gray and clumsy and way too big. The mother duck thought, "How big and clumsy this duckling is." But she loved him just as much as the other ducklings. The next day, the mother duck took her ducklings to meet the other farm animals. As soon as they entered the farmyard, the other animals started to call the gray duckling names. "Look at the ugly duckling," said a mean old goose. Soon, his own brothers and sisters were calling him names. They called him Ugly Duckling. This went on for days, and the ugly duckling decided to run far away. He ran deep into the field. He finally came upon a pond full of geese. It was nighttime, so he fell asleep in the tall grass surrounding the pond. In the morning, the ugly duckling was just about to meet the geese when they were scared by a hunter and his dogs. The ugly duckling stayed in the long grass and hid from the hunter and his scary dogs. When he was sure they were gone, he started to walk towards a cottage he could see. An old woman lived there with her prize hen and cat. The old woman let the ugly duckling stay because she thought she could fatten up the duck to sell him at the market. The prize hen and the cat were very rude to the ugly duckling, and besides, there was no water for him to swim on here. So the ugly duckling snuck away one night to find a lake. He found a nice lake, but none of the other birds spoke to him. They thought he was too ugly to bother with. One day, a beautiful flock of white birds with long necks flew overhead. The ugly duckling began to cry, but he had no idea why. It was getting colder, and soon all the other birds left the pond because winter was coming. The ugly duckling stayed and awoke one morning to find his feet frozen in the lake. A nice, kind farmer found the ugly duckling and saved him. He thought he would be a nice house pet for his children, so he brought the ugly duckling home. His wife and children were not very happy with the ugly duckling, and so the ugly duckling snuck away to find a new home. It was winter, and the ugly duckling found a spot on a pond's edge. He built a nest. He was safely hidden to snuggle away the whole winter. Finally, spring arrived, and the pond thawed. The ugly duckling spread his wings. He found his wings grew very strong during the winter. The ugly duckling landed gracefully on the lovely pond. Just as he landed, he noticed 3 snowy swans near the pond's shore. He felt the same way he had had the first time he saw them fly overhead. The ugly duckling slowly swam over to meet the swans. And then, as the ugly duckling swam, he noticed his own reflection. What do you think he saw? His own reflection was that of a beautiful white swan. You see, over the winter, the ugly gray duckling had grown into a beautiful, white, graceful swan. and he was the most beautiful bird of all. The new swans welcomed their new swan friend. The swans were so very nice to the ugly duckling, who was now a stunning white swan. The ugly duckling promised himself he would never forget the lessons he had learned as a young ugly duckling, as he lived happily ever after with his new family on the beautiful pond. This is the story of Princess Elsa and Princess Anna. When they were little girls, they were best friends. Princess Anna was one of the only people in the world that knew Princess Elsa's secret. Elsa had the special power to make snow and ice. One night, Elsa used her secret power and filled the grand ballroom with snow so the sisters could play. As they were playing, Elsa lost control, and she accidentally hit Anna with a blast of icy magic. Anna was badly hurt. Her parents went off to the ancient mountain trolls to ask them for help. The wisest old troll told them that Anna could be saved, and that she was lucky to have been hit in the head and not in her heart. As the years passed, Anna forgot about that night. To keep Elsa's special gift a secret from everyone else, their parents surrounded the castle with walls and never let anyone inside. It seemed whenever Elsa had strong feelings, her magic powers would spill out. Elsa never wanted to hurt her sister again, so she stopped playing with Anna. Anna became very lonely. Even after their parents were lost, the two sisters didn't spend any time playing together. Years later, it was time for Elsa to become queen. For just that one special day, the castle gates were opened. Hundreds of guests attended Elsa's coronation ceremony. Elsa worked very hard the whole day to hide her feelings and special powers. At the party, Anna danced with a handsome prince. He made her heart flutter. They fell in love and decided to marry. Elsa thought this engagement was a bad idea. Anna could not believe her sister, and they started arguing. As Elsa lost control and started to shout, her secret power was exposed. As ice shot from her hands, everyone stared in shock. Now they all knew her secret. Elsa ran out of the castle and fled to the mountains. It was summer, but Elsa's power had created a terrible winter storm. Anna felt terrible and ran off to find her sister, despite the bad winter storm. She met a magic snowman along the way named Olaf. Olaf knew where they would find Elsa and agreed to help. Olaf led Anna to a beautiful ice palace that Elsa had created with her powers. Inside, Anna found Elsa and told her about the terrible storm. Anna told Elsa she must come back and help, but Elsa did not want to hurt anyone, and they started fighting about her return. As they fought, a wave of magic burst from Elsa and struck Anna in the heart. Elsa knew what she had to do. She had to find the trolls and ask how to reverse the magic which was now freezing her sister. Olaf agreed to help. Elsa and Olaf found the ancient mountain troll, and he said, "Only an act of true love can thaw Anna's frozen heart." Elsa brought Anna back to their parents' castle to find the prince Anna was to marry, as he could save Anna with his true love. He laughed when he saw her and threw the sisters in the dungeon. "I only pretended to love her to get the castle and kingdom," said the prince. Afraid and locked in the dungeon, Elsa looked at her frozen sister. All of a sudden, the prince came in with a sword. He swung it at Anna, and the sword shattered on her frozen body. Elsa grabbed her and held her frozen sister tight. And suddenly, Anna began to thaw. As Olaf watched them, he remembered the wise old troll and what he said. An act of true love will thaw her frozen heart. The two sisters' love had saved them and their kingdom. They were best friends again. Even in the summer, Elsa always made Olaf snow so he could never melt. And now the castle gates were wide open. The evil prince was long gone, and they all lived happily ever after. Long ago, in a small village, a woodcarver named Geppetto made a wooden puppet. It looked so much like a real boy that Geppetto gave it a name, Pinocchio. The old man was so happy, he showed the puppet to his cat Figaro and his goldfish Cleo. As Geppetto showed his puppet to his dear pets, a small cricket named Jiminy Cricket snuck into Geppetto's house to have a warm night's sleep. Jiminy Cricket watched as Geppetto set the puppet down and gazed out the window at the stars. "Look at that! The wishing star!" Geppetto cried. Geppetto wished Pinocchio was a real boy. Soon it was bedtime, and Geppetto, Figaro, Cleo, and Jiminy Cricket all fell asleep. Before long, a beautiful light filled the workshop and woke up Jiminy Cricket. It was the Blue Fairy. She had heard Geppetto's wish and was there to make Pinocchio a real boy. She touched the puppet with her magic wand, and Pinocchio came to life. But Pinocchio had to prove he was brave, truthful, and unselfish to become a real boy. The Blue Fairy knew Pinocchio would need help, so she made Jiminy Cricket his helper, so he would help him to choose between right and wrong, and prove himself. Geppetto was delighted with Pinocchio, and he sent him off to school like a good parent. On the way to school, Pinocchio met a sly fox, who said Pinocchio could make a lot of money and didn't have to go to school. Jiminy Cricket didn't trust the sly fox. The sly fox said he could spend all of his time having fun in the theater instead of studying at school. Pinocchio said, "Okay!" and off he went with the sly fox to the theater owner. That night, the theater owner put Pinocchio on stage. He was a big hit as he sang and danced for the crowd. The crowd threw money on the stage. Jiminy Cricket, who was in the crowd, worried. After the show, the theater owner locked Pinocchio up and said, "You will live here and make me lots of money." Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket wondered how he could escape. Luckily, the Blue Fairy arrived. She asked Pinocchio why he missed school. He lied. She asked him more questions, and each time he told a lie, his nose grew longer and longer. The Blue Fairy reminded him to tell the truth if he wanted to be a real boy. Pinocchio promised he would tell the truth. She fixed his nose and set him free. The next day, Pinocchio met the sly fox again. The sly fox convinced Pinocchio to not go to school, but instead play and have fun all day. Pinocchio followed the fox, not returning home after regular school time. Geppetto was worried and went to look for Pinocchio. Geppetto sailed his boat to search for Pinocchio, and he was swallowed up by a huge whale. When Pinocchio returned home from playing all day, he found this out, and he knew he must save Geppetto. Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket found the huge whale, and they teased him with the fish. The whale grabbed the fish, the pole, Pinocchio, and Jiminy Cricket, and they were all swallowed into his belly. They found Geppetto in the whale's belly too. They must find a way to escape from the whale. They decided they would make the whale sneeze, and they would all escape when the whale opened his mouth. It worked, but when the whale saw them in the water, he thrashed around, knocking everyone about. Pinocchio had to grab Geppetto to save him. After a while, the water settled down and Geppetto and Jiminy Cricket awoke on the beach. They found Pinocchio lying lifeless on the rocks. Geppetto was heartbroken, and he carried his son home in his arms, convinced he had lost Pinocchio forever. Back in the workshop, Geppetto and Jiminy Cricket cried, and then all of a sudden, the blue fairy appeared. She touched her wand on Pinocchio and said, "Awake!" Pinocchio awoke, and the blue fairy said, "By saving Geppetto, you have proven yourself to be brave, truthful, and unselfish." "I am a real boy!" shouted Pinocchio. Pinocchio, Geppetto, Jiminy Cricket, and all the pets celebrated and danced as Geppetto's wish had come true. Pinocchio was a real boy. A long time ago, a woodcutter lived on the edge of a large forest with his 2 children, a girl named Gretel and his son named Hansel, and his wife who was the children's stepmother. They were very poor, despite all the hardcutter's hard work. One year there was a terrible famine, and there was not enough food for the whole family. One night, the stepmother told the woodcutter they must take Hansel and Gretel deep into the forest and leave them there. Hansel overheard them talking. He told Gretel the terrible plan. Then, Hansel had a great idea. He would fill his pockets with white pebbles to leave a path back to the house when this happened. The next morning, the stepmother said they all had to go into the woods to gather firewood. As they walked deeper and deeper into the woods, Hansel dropped his white pebbles to mark the path back to their house. The next day, Hansel and Gretel returned back to the house. Their stepmother was very angry. She told the woodcutter to take them deeper into the woods. This time, Hansel marked their path with breadcrumbs from his pocket so they could find their way home. In the morning, there were no breadcrumbs. The woodland animals had eaten them all. Hansel and Gretel began to walk through the forest, and suddenly, they could not believe their eyes. They found the most amazing house, made of gingerbread, with a roof of icing and windows made of sugar. They were so hungry, they broke off a piece of the house to eat. Then they heard a voice. "Nibble, nibble like a mouse. Who's that nibbling at my house?" The door opened, and an old woman leaning on a cane frightened Hansel and Gretel. The woman then smiled and invited Hansel and Gretel into her house for a delicious dinner of pancakes and apples. After dinner, she said they could stay for the night, and she made up the beds for them, as sweet and kind as any grandmother. The children had no idea the old woman was really a wicked witch. Before Hansel and Gretel awoke the next morning, the wicked witch carried Hansel to a cage she had built and locked him inside. "Now I can fatten you up so I can eat you." The witch made Gretel cook, so Hansel would grow plump. The children cried and begged to be set free, but the wicked witch just laughed at them. Every day the wicked witch, who could not see very well, wanted to feel Hansel's fingers through the bars of the cage, so she could feel how plump he was getting, plump enough to eat. But Hansel cleverly only gave her an old bone to feel. She thought he was always much too thin for her to eat. Weeks went by, and the witch was becoming impatient, as Hansel didn't seem to be growing any fatter. One morning, the witch ordered Gretel to make a fire in the oven. After a while, the witch said to Gretel, "Climb up into the oven to see if the fire is ready." Gretel asked, "But how can I get into the oven to see?" The witch was impatient and climbed up herself to show Gretel how to look at the fire. Quick as a wink, Gretel shoved the old witch into the oven. Then she banged the door shut. Gretel ran over to free Hansel from the cage. They now had nothing to be afraid of. They explored the witch's house and found jewels and gold coins in every corner. Hansel and Gretel filled their pockets with all the riches and gold coins, and they set out to find their way home. They walked for a long time and finally came to the edge of a big lake. "How can we ever cross without a bridge or a boat?" said Hansel. "Here comes a swan," said Gretel. "I will ask her to help us." The beautiful swan agreed to carry them across the lake. Once they were on the other side, they recognized the forest edge, and they began to run down the path towards home. When the woodcutter saw them running towards him, he cried tears of joy for seeing his children. He did not have a moment of peace since he had left them in the forest. His wife had died while they were gone. The children emptied their pockets of all the gold, rubies, and diamonds. The father could not believe his eyes. The woodcutter, Hansel and Gretel all lived happily ever after, with the help of the witch's gold and treasures.